Good morning, Rabbi Sai. Sponsored by Yossi Saunders for my wife Miriam in honor of her birthday today. Thank you, Hashem, for allowing me to meet my true Eshes Chayil. Wonderful. Mamish nice. And by Ira Greenstein for, or Refuah Shlemah for, Chaim Shlomo ben Rachel. So as you can see, the background is different, the country is different, the state is different. I'm right now in America, in Chicago, which reminds me I should probably turn off my phone here. Okay, hopefully nobody calls me in the middle. Yeah, what do you want me to do? Bringing a lighting company? This is the lighting that we have in this room. You want me to go to another room? What exactly are you recommending? If it's something I could change, let me know. Other than that, this is the room they gave me at 12:15 in the morning. Hopefully, I'm not waking anybody up in this house.
Okay,
Yishkoyach Mark. Yeah, I made it here in one piece. Believe it or not, there's not a single Maisish Kamat Hoya that I could even come up with. There were people next to me that got thrown home. They had to go home crying in line. If you don't have the right test, there's a guy in Germany who made it from Russia, I think it was, without a COVID test. Somehow he got on the plane and he got to Germany. He said, "Where's your COVID test?" "I don't have one." "Go back home." He was screaming and carrying on. There's like, "No, this is the way it is. You don't have a COVID test, you go." So, what? But no, they let me here. "No, go back home." Kitzer. So there's a lot of stories, but nothing happened to me, Baruch Hashem. It was uneventful. Everybody behaved, and I'm here. Baruch Hashem. The only thing here in Chicago was snowing, and of course we didn't have coats. And we have coats here in Chicago, or we had coats in Chicago, but we no longer have coats in Chicago. But that's a whole different story. So we have to go buy some coats tomorrow. Other than that, everything is B'Seder Gomor, and here we go. We are today's Daf Kuf Tesvav. We're on the bottom of Daf Kuf Yud Daled Amud Beis. In fact, we actually got to Daf Kuf Tesvav Amud Aleph on top, but let's just take it 6 lines, just a quick chazara. Gemara says like this: Pshita heicha de ikes shar yirakois. And basically, this is what we do today. If you have other vegetables, because we're talking about the 2 types of dippings, we eat 2 vegetables. One of them, of course, is the maror. In the time of Beis Hamikdash, it's the doiraisa. In our days, it's the rabbanon. But what if you don't have 2 types of vegetables? You only have one. Says the Gemara, if you have different types of vegetables. Somebody sent me today that he was at, who was it? Avigdor Fold. He was at a Seder, and the vegetable they used, believe it or not, was a strawberry. Okay. But let's say you have, the common vegetable. You have celery, cucumber, potato. Mevarech ashar yirok is bayir pri adama. Then there's a no-brainer. You make a bayir pri adama on your potato. V'achal. And you eat. V'hadem mevarech al achilas mar v'achal. And later on, after you do some of the agada, and you eat the matzah, and then you get to the marar, you make one brocha al achilas mar. What about the bayir pri adama? You're yaitza with the bayir pri adama in the beginning of the Seder. Now, 3 lines from the bottom. Hey, but once again, we're talking about, I hate to say this for the Hasidim again, but we're talking about lettuce. Lettuce. The Gemara constantly talks about lettuce. If you're using lettuce for marar, because that was the number 1 option, and that's all you have in the Seder, but you want to be yaitza, the first achila of a vegetable, mai. What's the Seder of the bracha? You should make a bayir pri adama. Nothing changes. You make a bayir pri adama, you eat. And afterwards you make achilas maror. So in other words, you only make 1 bayir pri adama. And that's it. Why? Because Rav Huna is of the opinion that mitzvah is tzricha is kavana. you have to have intent. And when you ate the first lettuce, you didn't have intent for maror. You had intent for just part of the Seder. We wash our hands, most of us, unless you're a grunik. And I'm saying you wash your hand, but you don't make on Tizidai. Or you do. And then, when you have in mind to be yoy to the mitzvah of maror, you make al achilas maror, but you don't have to repeat the bracha of Bayir Priyadama. And here we are, this is where we're holding. Maskiv la Rav Chizda, top of Daf Amud Aleph. La'achar shemilei kreis sayimenu. You stuffed your stomach with a bunch of lettuce. You're starving. The whole day, can't eat anything. That's a different halacha. So, you finally get there, and people, they fill up a little bit on the vegetable. Fill up on the lettuce. How does it make any sense that you're going to stuff yourself with a vegetable, make a bayir priyadama, and all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, you're going to eat it again, the same vegetable, and make another bracha on it? It doesn't make any sense. Rav Chizda is completely mechulig on Rav Huna, and he holds that the second achila is the not so important achila. The first one is the first achila. If you only have maror on the table, you don't have different types of vegetables, so you make the maror in the beginning of the Seder. You're supposed to have the maror afterwards, after al matzah sum roirim yichlu, after you have the matzah. No, you only have one now. So let's eat the maror now, make the bracha ha'adama, and immediately al achilas maror. And then, later on, after that, goda, after this, after that, achil, achilas chaso, beloy bracha. Why? Because Rav Chizda holds that the reason why you eat the second dipping would be, I see what you're saying. This lighting is terrible here. Okay, got to move it a little bit like this. Okay, still bad. But for Zoom, it's okay. So maybe it's the camera, because I'm using the reverse camera. But I'm not going to be mevater on that one. You know what? Here, who told me that? Mark, tell me if this is better.
Okay.
Hold on. Better, Taco?
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. It's all in the camera.
All about the Yomi.
Says the Gemara, Besurya Avdik Rav Huna. So if you only have one vegetable, Baruch Hashem, we're fortunate that we don't have this issue anymore, most of the time, unless you forget to buy. But if you only have one vegetable, so according to Rav Huna, you make hadama, not achilas mar. The achilas mar comes afterwards. Rav Sheshes, Bereder Rav Yeshua, Vidkir Rav Chizda, V'hilchasek V'aseder Rav Chizda. If you only have one vegetable, you do the mar right away. You say a hadama and a marar, achilas mar, and then afterwards you do the second dipping. And what's the second dipping? Like we have in the Manashtana, shtei pa'amim. We dip. Why? To make a heker that the kid should ask questions. Says the Gemara, and that's what we do today. He went out of his way, Ravacha, to go get different vegetables, you get the cucumbers, and if you live in all the way up north over there by a Victor Fold, you get a strawberry. Maybe some will say it's not such a good vegetable because it's sweet like a fruit. I don't know what the pshat is, but I never seen anybody use it, but it's interesting. You know what? Gewaldik Einfall. As we'll see from the Gemara, you're supposed to do some weird stuff in the Seder. Maybe you should get some strawberries. And the kids will start asking questions. Kids ask questions, then you mamish yaitze the whole thing, and then you start saying, you say, you know what, don't eat it. I stand put it here. Today we're dipping strawberries in salt water. Be an unbelievable thing. Okay? It's a great idea. So there shouldn't be any machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Chizda. So we buy some potatoes and the cucumbers, and we dip that, and then afterwards we do the marar. Omar Avina. Omar Rav Mishai Rav Nasan. Hachi Omar Hillel. Now, on the side in the Gois V'Tziyunim it says, very interesting, that his name is Rav Hillel. Regardless what his name is, he's not the famous Hillel from Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. He's not the Tana Hillel that's known to climb up the roof and look into the and freeze on the skylight. This is Rav Hillel and Amayr that lived hundreds of years later. Mishmei the Gemara. Rav Misharshio said in the name of Rav Hillel, in the name of the Gemara, how do we know that it's not Hillel? Because Hillel is the one that says you should do a kricha. That's why Zeichel and Migdash ke Hillel. So Hillel is the famous one, as the Gemara is going to bring it in a second. But here's Rav Hillel that says you shouldn't put the matzah umar together and eat. Why? Mishum the svirlon matzah bizman hazeh doiraisa umar derabanan. Very interesting halacha. By the way, before we go into the halacha, a riddle. It's not such a hard riddle. This is from the easier ones. What food, if any, is there a mitzvah d'iraisa to eat? Now, sometimes there's a mitzvah d'iraisa to eat, let's say in the sukkah. But the Torah doesn't say you should eat cholent in the sukkah. But here, there's one mitzvah, only one mitzvah, says the Chassam Sofer, in the world that the Torah says you should eat. And that is matzah. There's only one food that is a chiyuv of the iraisa to eat. So says Rav Hillel, matzah bizman hazeh d'iraisa. Eating matzah is a d'iraisa. And maror d'rabbanan. Eating maror bizman hazeh is only d'rabbanan. V'asi maror d'rabbanan u'mevatalei l'matzah d'iraisa. Says the Gemara that the flavor, according to the Rashbam, the flavor of the maror is going to overcome the flavor of the matzah and be mevatalit, and you're not going to be mekayim the mitzvah of matzah, since matzah is the raisa. And even if you say that one flavor doesn't cancel out another flavor when it comes to mitzvah, if they're on the same level, they're both deraisa, or under the same level, they're both derabanan. Of deraisa, of derabanan, over here we have a mitzvah of matzah which is deraisa. We have a mitzvah of maror which is derabanan. Os derabanan of deraisa. Ma'antana the shamas le mitzvah same about the zuzu. So we're going to have a three-way machlokes. Very simple. Either there's a chiyuv to take everything, the carbon pesach, the matzah and the maror, and wrap them together and eat it, or there's an isser to put them all together. In other words, you're not yaitz the mitzvah when they're all together. Or the third sheet is either one. You can do whatever you want. It might be better to do it together, but if you do it individually, you're yaitz. So again, either you're mechuyev to put all three together, like Hillel said in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, or it's not a good idea. You're not yaitz at all if you put all three together, the Pesach, Matzah, and Maror, what we call koirach, or you can do whatever you want. It's better, but if you don't, you're yaitz. Says the Gemara, man tana the shamas le mitzvahs aim about the zuzu. Hillel, the Tana Hillel holds that the flavors don't cancel each other out, and therefore why? Because he paskins that you do kricha. The Sanyamru Allah al Hillel shoyu karcham bevasachas. What was he karach together? The carbon pesach, the meat, three things: the meat, the matzah, and the maror. Ve oichlon shenemar al matzois umroirim yochluhu. All three together. Yochlu. What's yochlu? The carbon pesach together with matzahs and maror. So very interesting. The Mordechai asks that we learned in the Gemara that you can only fit in your mouth 2 kezesim. So how in the world could you fit 3 kezesim of carbon pesach, matzah, and maror in your mouth? Says the Mordechai, a Rishon. It's because he chewed it up. When it's chewed up, there's more room in the mouth. So you start out with a kezayis of meat, but after it's chewed, it gets a little smaller. Same thing with the matzah. Says the Trumas Hadeshen, and this is I'm bringing this because it's Negel and Maisa. You see from the Mordechai that he's supposed to swallow the whole thing in one shot. Otherwise, what's the problem with the Mordechai? You take the kairach, you chew, you swallow. Chew, swallow. Until you get through the 3 kezesim. What's the Mordechai's problem? How could it all fit in your mouth? It fit in your mouth because you ate it slowly. So you see from here, and there is an inyan, that when you're eating matzah, I know it's difficult and I've never tried it. But again, we're learning new things here. There's Indian, according to the Trum Sadesh, according to the Marchai, to chew the matzah, the kazayis in your mouth, do not swallow, and swallow the entire kazayis in one shot. That's the mitzvah of achilas matzah, kazayis in one shot. And over here, the achila of kairach all in one shot. Shnemar matzah sumroim yechlu. Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Cholken olav chaver val Hillel. Hillel's friends argued with Hillel. The sanyo yochel yekorchem bevasachas v'oichlan kederch she'Hillel oichlan. Perhaps you would think that Hillel is correct. You do kairach. Tamaloimar al matzos umroim yechlu hu. The who at the end, the pasuk could have said al matzos umroim yochlu without a who. Yochlu who says him by itself, it by itself. Each one is individual. Afilu zeh b'fnei atzmoi v'zeh b'fnei atzmoi. Masklo Rav Ashi yochim afilu. If they argue with Hillel and they say that you're not supposed to eat it together, so what's afilu? Afilu means they have the option. There's no option. Hillel holds all three together in one shot. They hold one by one and not together, because if you do it together, it doesn't fit into the word yochluhu. Says the Gemara, Elom Rav Ashi. Hi Tana Achiktan. The Tana actually agrees with Hillel. There is a lechatchila here. It is better to eat all three together as a sandwich. I would think that it's ma'akev. It's not a lechatchila, but that's the only way to do the mitzvah, is all three together as a sandwich. You want to do, the preferable way is to eat it together. Otherwise, if you don't, you're still yaitza. Rabbi, it's unbelievable. Just in a few days, Seder night, and we get a much better understanding and insight of what's going on here. All these things we did in our entire lives, we had no idea. We eat matzah, then we eat maror, then we eat a kairach. Why? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. I don't know who's right. I don't know if Hillel's right that he's supposed to eat all three together. I don't know if Rabbanan are right that you should eat it or you could eat it individually. Now, there's a problem if you could eat it individually. Why? First, you eat just matzah. Why? Because today we're the Rabbanan. We're not in the time of Hillel. In the time of Hillel, he had a carbon Pesach. So it's a no-brainer. You eat the carbon Pesach together with the matzah. But today, we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. And if you're going to eat the maror together with the matzah, we said before, the maror is the Rabbanan, and the flavor of the Rabbanan can cancel the flavor of the matzah. You're not yaitz the matzah. So that's why you're supposed to eat matzah all alone, so you mekayim the mitzvah deraisa. And then, v'hoda mevarach al achilas maror v'achil. But don't eat the maror with matzah. You know why? Very interesting. Because, listen to this, tremendous chap. Since you already ate matzah, you ate a kazayas, so now the following kazayas is rishus. It's not even a derabanan. It's nothing. And your nothing matzah, your rishus matzah, is going to cancel the derabanan maror. You hear what's going on here? A derabanan maror cancels a high level doiraisa matzah. So eat the matzah by itself. But once you ate the matzah by itself, now the matzah is worse than maror. Before it was much better, it was higher than maror. Now the matzah is lower than maror. So why? Because you don't have to eat any more matzah. You already ate a kazayas. So the fact that you're eating matzah, stop, because you're hungry. Oh, that's matzah of rishus. The matzah of rishus has the power to ruin a mitzvah d'Rabbanan of maror. So be careful. Eat the maror all by itself. And then you take the matzah and the maror together. Beloy bracha. Because called the takon, the Rabbanan came the Iraisa takon. Rabbanan were masakin it exactly like the Iraisa. So now you eat the two of them together, they don't cancel each other out, and you make a sandwich, and that's what we do. I know everybody knows this halacha, or almost everybody knows this halacha. It's important to remember that you don't speak from the beginning, or when you start eating, you make your brocha on the matzah all the way until the end of kairach, because that could be a hefsek. You need the brocha of achilas matzah and amaitzi and everything on your kairach as well, and it takes a long time until you're doing your kezesim, etc., etc. There's another very interesting halacha I saw brought down la halacha. I don't want to forget to say it. I know I have it down here to say it later, but since I remembered now, I'm going to say it now. Another halacha I wasn't aware of, I'd like to share with you. When it comes to matzah, so I jump off the table, I go to my table next door, there's a whole bunch of boxes of matzah, and I start searching for my kezesim. And if I was smart that year, and I put kezesim in plastic bags or whatever, so I go and I get my plastic bags and I start divvying it out to everybody. It says, brought down from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, I think, and other achronim, the matzah should be on the table beforehand. The matzah should be there because it's lechem sho'enim bodvarim harbe. It's the bread that we speak about and we talk about, and it's part of the Seder. So it should be there from the beginning of the Seder already on the table. Don't go searching for your matzah. Don't take it off your seat somewhere. It should be right there and then. Another halacha to remember to try to be makbid. Omer Rebbe Lazar, Omer Rav Yishaya. Kol shetibuli b'mashka tzorich netilas yadayim. This is halacha that not everybody's familiar with, and it's brought down halacha, and most Rishonim hold like this, that any food that is wet, and it doesn't matter why it's wet, it could be because you washed the grapes in the sink and they are wet. You washed your apple from the pesticide in the sink and it's wet. If you want to touch it, you have to wash your hands. You have to do netilas yadayim. There are many Rishonim that go as far as to say that you have to say al netilas yadayim. And the Vilna Gaon paskins that you have to say al netilas yadayim. I know you folks don't, but I do. So it's halacha to remember. What's going on here with this halacha? Midrabanan, people's hands are sheni. They have a second degree of tumah. What does a second degree of tumah accomplish? Like any tumah, if we start, I somehow have this. I don't have a printer yet, but I brought this with me. Not because I knew I was going to use it, for a different reason completely. Secret that I'll tell you on Monday. Maybe I won't. But I'll tell you one day. There's avi avois tumah. That's the dead corpse. If you touch that, you become an avatuma. And if you touch an avatuma, a human that touched the corpse, you become a rishon. That could be a kli as well. So it keeps on going down and down. A rishon can make a sheni, and a sheni can make a shlishi, and a shlishi revi. But what does a sheni do? If your hands are a sheni, what do they do? They can make truma. They can make truma. They can make tameh. Now, another halacha is that mashkim, which is one of the seven mashkim, you have the dew and the milk and the honey and the milk and blood and water. Mashkim, if they become tameh, they become a rishon. They jump up to become a rishon. So, if your hands that are a sheni touch water that's on an apple, what happens to the water? A reverse slide, it becomes a rishon. The rishon water that's on your apple, in return, makes your apple a sheni. What's happening here? Your hands are a sheni that touch the wet apple. Your hands that are a sheni cannot make an apple tameh, unless it's truma or kachim. But we're talking about chulin here. You're a regular guy. You're a Yisrael. So what they could do is, they could make your apple tameh. You know how? Because through the water. If your sheni hand touches water, the water becomes a rishon. Becomes so tameh, it's a rishon, and look what a rishon can do. It can make an apple. Here's an apple. It makes an apple a sheni. So that's why so anything that's wet, any food that's wet, you have to wash your hands. Otherwise, your hands are a sheni, and that sheni will make the mashka rishon, and in return it's touching the apple already, it'll make the apple one less than a rishon, which is a sheni. And we have to be makbid. Time of the Gemara, they were makbid on tumah, that the food shouldn't become tumah, even chulin shouldn't become tumah. All right, so therefore, Amar Papa Shmami no. So I see from this, Hai Chasa, going back to the lettuce. Sorry, go ahead, talking about the lettuce. Turning to Daf Yomi Amud Beis. Sponsored by Reb Eli Dykman, Brocha vehatzlacha for all the MDY team in their everyday lives, for all the hard avodas hakodesh they do. Sponsored for Refuah Shlemah for all the Chayil Yisrael, especially from our MDY family. Please consider joining the MDY Tehillim group, tehillim.8mindaf.com. Says the Gemara, so the Mela, Omer Papa Shmami no Hai Chasa, Tzorich l'shakui becharoises mishum kafa. Now, you see from here, you have to take the charois, the maror, and dip it 100% like a tfilas mitzvah. You have to put it completely in charoises. Why? There's something called kafa. Either kafa is the sap, the poisonous sap, the harmful sap that different vegetables have. Lettuce has it. As the Gemara is going to talk later, different vegetables have it, radish, whatever. Or, according to Rabbeinu Hananel, it's talking about a worm called kafa. And in order to destroy this worm, which is a sakana to a person to eat, you have to dip it in charesis. Now, let's just jump for a second. What's going on here? If it's a worm, a little bit of an isser to eat a worm. So what does it mean? You have to dip it in charesis to get rid of the worm. But you're not allowed to eat worms. Forget the charesis. You can't eat worms. Now, this is a whole shaila, machlokes. What kind of worms can you eat? Some hold that if the worm was born in the fruit, it's not attached to the ground, it's okay. But even if we say that's okay, now, what about the man that says it's not okay? So it says Taisves that since it's so uncommon to find this kappa worm, we're not so concerned. But we're not concerned about the isser of worm. We are concerned about the sakana. Chamira sakanta mi'isura, says Taisus. He doesn't say those words, but he says we're talking about it, the problem of sakana, and it's understood throughout Shas. Anytime you have a issue of a sakana, danger of eating a kappa worm, then you have to be more makbid on the sakana than you're makbid on the isser. So happens to be that on Shabbos, the Gevaldik Shabbos I just had with my good friends, and Noam Fix was telling us that he was at a hotel, and I heard this story a number of times, unfortunately. So I'm saying this to be careful. That he was in a hotel, a Pesach program, and the lettuce was literally crawling with creatures, crawling. Every piece you picked up, there were worms moving around that was to the naked eye. You could just see them walking around. And he went to the Mashgiach, and he told Mashgiach, we have to make an announcement. The Mashgiach said, no, it has a hechsher, it's fine, etc. So you should know that a lot of these programs, unfortunately, because it's such a hefsin meruba, and everybody's concerned about their pocket and this and that sometimes they let these kind of things go. And I heard the story, literally the same story about the worms crawling. Not to mention that we, in our own private hotel, that we do our own hechsher, we had a major issue one year where we used chametz vinegar. It was the wrong vinegar, and it was literally chametz. But because we own the place and it's our food and this and that, we didn't care to lose money. But if you're talking about 1,000 guests and they're paying crazy amounts of money for Pesach, and all of a sudden they're not going to have maror, I mean, it's crazy. How could they not have maror? So they start making excuses, and very sad things happen in these things. So you have to be really, really careful. But Taisa is not talking about a crawling leaf. Taisa is saying that you don't know that there's a worm here. You only have to be concerned that there might be a sakana worm, a poisonous worm. So what do? You have to dunk it in the charoises. The charoises gets rid of this worm. So what's the Gemara's raya? First line on top. We're still holding in the raya. If you don't have to dump it 100%, you only have to dunk it in 90% into the sidayim lamali. Then why does the halacha they have to wash your hands for this dunking? The charoisis is moist, and it causes you to need to wash your hands. Holy naga. Why can't you just grab it by the top, by the stem of the mar, dunk it in charoisis as much as you need, 95% in, get rid of the kappa worm, and that's it. You never touched any moist part. Holy naga. Says the Gemara, not a great raya. You don't need it. And 95% is okay to kill this worm because, and this is mamish meduik like Rabbeinu Chanal, we're talking about a worm, not like the other pshat in the Rashbam that we're talking about the sap that comes out, because what does it mean? The sap dies from a smell? Okay. Why do I need to wash my hands? Because sometimes it falls out of your hand and you're going to grab it or whatever it is. You're going to go a little bit more than 95% until your finger touches. And that's the issue. So you just geyser, just wash your hands and finish. Okay. I don't know about you, my father always used to tell us, I'm a charoises guy. I told you I was busy making charoises for the last 3 months. So it's one of those foods. It's like herring, like liver. Either you hate it or you love it. It's like one of these things. People like it a lot or they hate it. They can't stand it. But I used to pile up that charoises like crazy. You're getting to the mara or to the kayach, pile it up. And my father used to say, no, get rid of it. It's not good. It's not good. And when he wasn't looking, I'd throwing the 2 spoons and biting out. Why? Here's the Gemara. Don't allow the mar to dwell, to sit there in the charoises. Why? It's going to be mevatel the flavor of the mar. So it's not a good thing. You put it in, for whatever reason we put it in, we're going to see later on in the sugya tomorrow. But don't let it sit there. I saw a beautiful Rabbi Yitzchak Arya share. He says, why do we do this? What's this inyan of taking the marar and dipping it into the charoises? It's mamish naget to everybody, especially me, today. At Klal Yisrael's worst matzav, all the shari tumah they're in, the slavery, the terrible, terrible conditions. HaKadosh Baruch Hu always showed them beautiful nisim gluyim and Yad Hashem. The beauty. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had them have 6 babies under these apple trees. They would leave the babies and HaKadosh Baruch Hu would take care of them. Nisim gluyim. In the middle of the finster, in the middle of the choshech, there was always a light. In the middle of the marar, there's a little bit of sweet charoises. That's the inyan. Ube'inon tam marar v'lekeho. Says the Gemara, another nest. Stam, I'm thinking there was no tsar. They all these women gave birth without any pain. It was obvious that Hakadosh Baruch Hu was running the world here. It was very obvious to them, but they were in a lot of pain. Adber Rav Chizda l'Rabbana ukva v'udarash. Interesting. Rav Chizda gave the microphone to Rabbana Ukva. He said, I'm supposed to speak, but I want you. I defer to you. And he said, Not al yodav betibul rishon, noital yodav betibul sheni. If you wash your hands when you eat the kartoflach, the first vegetable, the potato, whatever you're eating the first time, wash your hands again. Again when you eat the mar. Amru Rabbana kamei Rapapa, hoba alma itmar. This was said in general, if you're sitting at a meal. If it's talking about by the Seder, why do you have to wash your hands twice? Doesn't make any sense. You already wash your hands. It's talking about Lila Seder. If he's talking about a Tuesday night dinner, who dunks vegetables twice? They don't even dunk it once. So at the end of the day, why do I need to wash your hand? Why do you need to wash my hands twice at the Seder? And we had this svara a little bit earlier. Once I'm saying other things, I get involved in the Haggadah. We're singing and the Hallel and the whole thing. Now we're concerned. There's a period of time, there's a whole thing going on, there's a whole commotion. The Haggadah, Hallel. You might come to touch your shoe, to touch a makam mechusa. And you have to wash your hands. Now we have all the time when it comes to washing hands and becoming some chusim and sleeping and haschadas. That's the inyan. Omar Rava, bola matzah yotza. If a person, without chewing the matzah, somehow it sounds extremely painful to me, but somehow he takes the matzah, because we're not even talking about, we don't want to soak the matzah in water. I guess if you soak it, it's much easier. But that's matzah shruya. We don't want to get involved in that. Takes the matzah and shoves it down the back of his throat without chewing it. Or, I saw a Moshe Feinstein talks over here. What about an old man? Very old man, a very frail person. Doesn't have teeth. What should he do? He paskins that he should crush up the matzah. He should make matzah meal and eat it like that. So there is an idea of putting it to the back of your mouth. And he says it's much better, obviously, than taking a whole piece and soaking it in water. It's better to break it up into small pieces. So maybe that's what happened there. Bala marar lo yatsa. What's the nafkamina? Why? Because marar, you have to taste the bitterness. Now lettuce, is not that bitter, but whatever the taste of lettuce is, that's what Chaim said. You don't have to go crazy and make yourself cry in tears and the whole thing. That's not what marar is. Whatever the taste of that lettuce, of that romaine lettuce, whatever it is, a little bit, doesn't taste the best, that's the merirus. But if you get rid of that merirus, you put it to the back of your mouth, you're not yaitza. Matzah, there's no inyan to taste the matzah. The inyan is to eat the matzah. That's considered an achila. Karchem b'siv u'blan. And nowadays, you take the matzah, you put it in a plastic bag and swallow it. The sieves, some sort of reed, some sort of leaf. Afidei matzah nami lo yotza. Even matzah you're not yotza. Did I skip something here? Bola matzah umar. Yeah, I skipped. Bola matzah, you know how I know I skipped? Because it's a very important line here. Bola matzah umar. Yidei matzah yotza, yidei mar lo yotza. If you took the two together, matzah umar, and you put them down your mouth, you yotza matzah, not mar. Now what's the big chiddush? We just said, if you swallow matzah, yaitza. Swallow mar, not yaitza. Okay, so you put them both together. So okay, matzah yaitza, mar not yaitza. Why does the Gemara have to repeat itself? Because the Gemara is telling you that don't worry about the marar that's causing a chatzitza, so to speak, between your throat and the matzah. Part of your matzah is not even touching your throat. Part of the matzah is sitting on top of a piece of marar. So think that you're not yaitza. Kamash Malan, even though the mar is there, you yaitza. There's people that discuss, we're not going to go into it, but if chas v'shalom, somebody's in a hospital and he's eating through a tube, a stomach tube, it doesn't even go through his mouth, so someone to prove from here that you have to make a brocha achroina. This is a sugya of not feeling the food, not just putting it to the back of your throat, what's considered an achila, what's not considered an achila. Omer Rav Shimi Barashi. Matzah lefnei kol echad ve'echad, marar lefnei kol echad ve'echad, v'charoises lefnei kol echad ve'echad. The way the Seder table looks, time of the Gemara, each one had their own little table, this little folding table, like a TV dinner kind of table, and each person should have a matzah, a marar, and charoises. Gets their Seder plate. Ve'noiger nisas shulchan ela lefnei misha oimer haggadah. So, in those days, they would lift up the small little tiny table, only weighed a couple of pounds, pick it up and move it away. Pick it up, bring it back, the children start asking questions. Taisus points out in nowadays that the tables are extremely heavy. Obviously, you're not going to pick up a table that holds 25 people and take it out of the room. Elo lefnei mi she'omer hagoda. Now, if you medayik in the word here, it says here she'omer. It doesn't say she'omrim. It seems like one person said the Haggadah and was mitzi everybody. Shemei kaina. Now, typically, when we make a bracha on a Shabbos, the Balabayis, he says Kiddush, he's mitzi everybody. Why? Because that's a Birkas HaNenim. When it comes to Leil HaSeder, when you have Birkas HaMitzvahs, I don't make a bracha to be mitzi my wife on a lulav. I'm not talking about the deraisa, nachi, or whatever. Just pretend. So Birkas HaMitzvahs, I make my own bracha, you make your own bracha, so you make your own hamoitzi ala achilas matzah, you make your own ala achilas mar. But the amiras Haggadah, the saying of the Haggadah, it says over in the Gemara, one person said the Haggadah. Ravuna Omer, Kulu nami lifnei misha Omer Haggadah. Says Ravuna, only one person should have a seder plate. V'hilchasa Ravuna, only the Balabayis has the seder plate. Lama oikrim shulchan, and why do they pick up the table and move it out of there? This is something to make a hecker again, and based on that hecker, the children ask questions. Wow. The lights just went off here, but I hope everybody hears me. But the problem is I can't see. Hold on 1 second.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Unbelievable. Gewaldig. This is America. Everything's on computers. Unbelievable place here I'm sitting in. Mom is beautiful. I got to talk to the Balabayis. 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock the lights go off. Okay. It's a sign that we have to finish here. But we're almost done here. Abaya says the Gemara, Avi Yosef Kamei de Rabba. So we had this just the other day. Abaya was a Yosem from his father and his mother, and who brought him up? His uncle, Rabba. So he's sitting there as a child, he's sitting by Rabba's Seder. All of a sudden they come in, they take the table out. Omer Luhu, Adayin lekach. We didn't even finish the meal. Also, come akir takim, come on, what's going on here? Daddy, I don't understand. Why are they taking the table? Omer Rabba, oh, beautiful. You just said the whole manishtana. You just asked the kasha, Mordig, you don't have to do the official one. You ask your own question, great. So, according to the Rashbam, it's literal. You don't have to say manishtana. You don't have to ask 4 questions. Tomorrow there's a whole manishtana. 1 question is enough. Taisa says, wait a minute. But you have to ask different questions. There's a chiyuv to ask different things. Says Taisa, you're right. That's the start. Oh, he started to ask questions. I could start answering. I have to say avodah, but it's the beginning, and we'll continue into the questions. Let's go a little weiter. Omer Shmuel lechem oini. It says in the Torah you have to eat the poor man's bread, but it's written ayin nun yud. We pronounce it ayin vav nun yud. Lechem sha'oinim olav dvarim. This is the bread that we answer to it. And that's why I said the halacha before, you should make sure the bread is on the table through the Seder, from the beginning of the Seder, even before you eat the matzah. Another pshat. Oni ksiv, but it says it without a vav. Poor. A poor man can't afford a full bread. Top of kufta zayin Amud Aleph. You break the bread, and what do? So, that's why there's an interesting halachas here. You break the middle matzah, according to the Vilna Gaon, there's only 2 matzah. We're not going to talk about the Vilna Gaon. So you break the middle matzah, and then you make hamaitzi on the 2, and you eat the gezayis from the top one. It has to be a lechem shalom. But you have the broken one. There's a discussion here. Which one? Broken, not broken. Some people take all 3 so that you have 2 shleimas. The point is you have to break it so it's lechem oini. It's the poor man's bread. How does it work? The poor man, he lights the oven and his wife bakes. So too, when it comes to matzah, the man, he lights, not like we do today, the reverse almost. He just lights the oven, walks away. She takes care of all the matzah baking. The Chassam Sofer says a beautiful thing here. He says, this is an idea of Shalom Bayis. He says, usually women, they like to make fights. They're quick to fight, but they're very quick to make up. Men, on the other hand, they don't like to fight that much, but when they fight, it's all over. They go all out, and they're not mevater. He's not talking about that the wives remember all the fights. He's talking about how fast they can make up. Women are easier going. So it says, who masik? The beginning of the fight should be like a man. Don't get into a fight. It's harder to get into a fight. And the end of the fight should be like women. If you do get into a fight, they're quicker to be mevater, they're quicker to be moichel. It was a derech militza, he says, but he based it on this Gemara. Rabbi Isai, have a wonderful day. And Noam, if you want, you can say some Tehillim. Amen. Amen. Yishkoyach Reb Hershey. Reb Hershey leader. Ah. Yishkoyach Reb Razner. You love charaises. Do you like liver?
He's just saying that to get you to come to see.
He wants you to send some of your charosis.
Have you been able to try the Ben and Jerry's Charosis ice cream?
No, I heard about it. What about charaises? What about almonds and charaises?
Best almonds come from California. That's why he wants you to come to San Francisco. He wants you to pick it yourself.
Bekitzer, Rabbi Isai, is Gedalia coming to the Siyum? That's what I want to know. Mordechai, I see you changing your face. That gives me a indication over there. Something's going on. Okay, yeah.
My parents could do a second shot the day after. We can get you back in time. Yeah, there's a red eye.
It's the Airforce 8.
We'll fly a Concorde.
What's happening with the Manchester Siyum? Is there going to be a Manchester Siyum? I hope to be there. I hope to be there, Mr. Sam.
I had the same experience 2 weeks ago when I came from England via Germany through Frankfurt.
Yeah.
The Balagan the very day in the airport, they had to check in for the Israeli flight 3 hours before, and most people didn't have the second documentation that you needed to come back to Israel. You had to do it there and there.
What's the second? Tell me what second documentation I need so I don't get stuck.
I know now they've said there was telling us every couple of days Israel came out with another law, another document you had to fill in that you had permission.
It was ridiculous.
This guy was screaming. The entire airport heard him. He was screaming. He says, "You guys are ruthless, emotionless." Screaming in English. He was going crazy. He says, I just came from Russia. I flew all the way. You're going to make me go back because I don't have one thing. What are you guys crazy? Oh my gosh. Sorry, sir. The guy had a machine gun. I'm not joking. He had a machine gun on him. He looked like, I don't know what, like a Gestapo. He had a machine gun. He's like, sorry, sir. That's the rule. That's the rule. Oh my gosh.
The Nazis are very tough the way they say that.
They're very, I hate going through that airport because they make you, if you have 1 ounce of liquid, they like put you in jail or something. Rabbi Yosef came in. Shalom Aleichem. How are you? Where are you from? Shalom Aleichem. I don't think I've ever seen you on, but Shalom Aleichem.
Yeah. No, I want to know. I read with Steve. I never had corona, and I don't want antibodies. I want to know if they let me in the thing. What can I do? What should I do?
Oy vavoy, oy vavoy. The first thing is he's an honest person. Other people just sneak in and said, "Yeah, I had corona." Yeah.
Go to Cayman Islands and come back.
That's the big question.
You know why we say Lachem Ani these days in Malcolm County?
Yeah, why?
Because Lachem Ani we say these days because Lachem Ani it's really like the bread. But when there was the Beit HaMikdash Hasheni, they used to say it's like Lachem Ani because they wasn't poor. They wasn't poor, and we're missing the Beit HaMikdash. They wasn't poor. They had it.
Ah, very nice, very nice.
So
There's no poor people then, huh?
Karoset got me in trouble 18 years ago, the first Pesach that I was at my in-laws. When my father-in-law...
Time out, Avi. I see that my picture's still up over there, so we're doing good. We're doing good.
So my father-in-law takes the maror and starts scooping piles of karoset and passing it around. And I'm like, what is this? It doesn't say to pile it up. It says you dip, and you're not eating maror. You're eating karoset with a green leaf underneath it.
Oh.
And that was at the first Seder, and I got some dirty looks from my wife and my sister-in-laws. And then the next night, my father-in-law goes, I looked it up this afternoon, Avi's right. And he just dipped the maror and passed it out, and now my wife and I have not been married for a year, and she wanted to kill me. Not much has changed in the past 18 years, but...
It's sisters and except that the rest of us want to kill you for that story.
What was that again?
Except that now the rest of us want to kill you after listening to that story.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
We're the Hasidim, man. I wanted to tell you guys a story that happened to me when I was 3 years old. We traveled to Boston to my Zaydi's house. My Zaydi's was a famous Rav over there, Mordechai Savitsky. But he's an old timer, a real old timer. He's old, he didn't have a lot of patience. And I was 3 years old, and I took all the beautiful flowers from his front yard, and I picked them. I took them all out of the ground, and I brought them into the house. And he almost lost it. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm making chareises." So he started screaming, "Chareises macht mir! Chareises! Ay, chareises macht mir!" I'll never forget it. I was 3 years old and he's screaming in Yiddish, "Chareises macht mir!" No, I think it became from that. I think he put it in me like he's so mad at me that I ruined his flowers, and I called it chareises. Chareises. Ay. The flower's amazing. But what are you going to tell me? I don't have to daven now. Eli, I don't have to daven. He's holding. Eli Trapper is holding. He chaps the maisa. I daven Ma'ariv. I don't have to daven Shacharis. I'm all good. What I have to do is go to sleep.
Let me ask you a question. I have a flight in Mr. Shem in next Sunday night, Monday morning, 5 days before the Pesachim Siyam. I have 6 staff to make up. Is it a good enough goal on a 5-hour flight to make up 6 staff? Or I'm going to go out next night.
I'll tell you this because nobody's listening. One flight from Tel Aviv to Chicago, I learned 60 daf. But Chazara, all Chazara. That's my record, my all-time record in one day. I went straight from the beginning, non-stop, 60 daf. 60. Why not? Why not?
He said to me, I can't learn after 5 hours. I said, listen, it's like watching a TV show. It's so entertaining for 5 hours.
I think, listen, it's enough time. The question is if you're going to be able to do it.
You have to download the video.
I'm going to download it from all that.
But are you able to do a faster speed? You able to go fast speed?
I don't need to. I mean, I would watch movies for 5 hours straight. I promise you I can do this in like 4 hours. The question is if anyone else does it. I don't know.
Hello, you're not going to believe this. On Shabbos, they're asking me, did you ever see The Greatest Showman or whatever? I said, no. They're like, what is...